Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. We're waiting for people to join us from the waiting room. Just a few more moments. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and I'm a physician investigator, co-PI of the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. And welcome everyone to this weekly Platform Trial webinar. Tonight, I'm here with Catherine Small, our patient navigator, and Jesse Rosenthal, our administrative assistant. And as always, we are here every week to talk about different topics. And in particular, tonight, we'll give an update on the Platform Trial. Next slide. So first of all, the Platform Trial would not be possible without the participation of people living with ALS, with the support from their families and their friends. So I just want to start here by acknowledging that this is a partnership with many people in the ALS community, first and foremost with people living with ALS. So we're doing this trial to develop new drugs, to work together, to find new ways to treat ALS. And I will say that every participant, whether an active drug or placebo, plays a critical role in helping us find new treatments for ALS. And in particular, in the Platform Trial, we have a shared placebo group that helps not just to test multiple drugs. Actually, the shared placebo group is a resource to test multiple drugs because each drug is compared to the shared placebo. So this is a unique way for us to amplify the impact of people in research, and whether you are on active or placebo during the placebo-controlled portion of the trial, you are providing great contributions, and in particular with the shared placebo, we can also, the contribution continues across different regimens. Next slide. So we opened in 2020. We continue to add new regimens, one or two regimens or one or two drugs every year, as you know. Right now, we are up to 7 drugs. That means one protocol, one common protocol, one central governance structure to test multiple drugs, up to 7 so far. We have been enrolling at a network of over 70 sites, and now we're over 1,000 participants enrolled. So really great progress in terms of creating an infrastructure to rapidly screen new drugs that come in. And so the goal of this common protocol is to continue to add drugs so that we can tell rapidly if they work or not, and then move on to the next. If you can click one more time, I do want to mention that we are enrolling, we are seeking new participants for regimens F and G. And the sooner, obviously, it's important for us to complete enrollment, because the sooner we get there, then the sooner we can start following them up. And then ultimately, we'll analyze the data to tell if the drugs in F and G work. So I also want to mention that we are working with new industry partners for new regimens. So right now, the goal for the first half of 2024 is to complete enrollment in regimens F and G, which are the drugs that we're testing right now. And then for the second half of the year, then we're going to work on setting up the new regimens. So the house continues to expand with new floors, new regimens, new drugs. And we're already working on the sort of administrative pieces or contracting pieces, so that then, in the second half of the year, we will be able to kind of start up these new regimens, and then eventually they will open for enrollment. Next slide. So every regimen, whether it was one of the first few regimens or one of the new upcoming regimens, every regimen is set up sort of the same way in terms of the trial being a screening tool to decide whether drugs have enough evidence to move on to the next phase of testing, like a larger phase 3 trial. So we want to provide a go, no-go decision to industry partners so that they can test their drugs in an efficient environment. That's the environment that the Platform Trial provides, with as much access as possible for people across a network of over 70 sites. And then if the drugs work, they can move on to phase 3 testing, to the next phase of development. And if they don't, they can be screened out rapidly using, again, the efficiencies of the central infrastructure, the shared placebo, so that we can make the best use of resources. I want to mention that I spoke about placebo, but as a reminder, the controlled placebo part, the placebo-controlled part or randomized portion of the trial is only 6 months long. That's the shortest that we can possibly go with a placebo-controlled trial, and that's followed by an active treatment extension, which is an active part of the trial. It's very important because also that tells us important information about the long-term safety and effectiveness of the drug. For every participant, for every regimen, we collect a number of endpoints or outcomes, such as function, muscle strength, respiratory function, etc., and a lot of biomarkers. Next slide. So as I said earlier, we are providing research access across a diverse network of over 70 sites. We're very proud of this. We're also very proud of the resources that we have on the web in terms of allowing people to easy access to the contact information for sites. So the contact information for all the sites can be found by using the link or QR code that you see on the slide. If for any reason you had trouble connecting with a site, please reach out to Catherine. She can help connect you with the sites in case there are delays or people are not responsive. So we really are striving to provide good support to people who inquire about the trial. And so let us know if you need any help. I also want to mention that for some areas, there's more than one site. And so, perhaps we have heard from some people that at times the site closest to them may be full or may already, may have longer wait times. So I would encourage people to consider enrolling perhaps in a site nearby. And again, your physician can advise on this. So the first point of contact should always be your physician. If you can talk to your ALS clinic and your physician and see if they're able to enroll you, and if not, if they can help connect you to a site nearby. Some cities have more than one site, and sometimes it's not in the same region, but it's within reasonable distance. So I would encourage people to look for also near sites. We know from some sites that actually they're having trouble finding participants. So again, if you're willing to move a little bit more far away, there could be options there too. And again, our patient navigator, Catherine, is here to help. Next slide. These are our enrollment updates for regimens F and G. We're certainly making great progress. You see the numbers on the screen. There is a flow here. And the reason for that is because before actually getting on regimen F or regimen G drug, participants need to first be screened. And the reason for that is to look for safety labs or other signals that may tell us whether it's that the particular regimen is good for you or not from a safety perspective. And so people first consent and need to understand the research and everything that's entailed in it, and need to know the schedule. We need to make sure the schedule works for you. And so after that, if people are considered eligible for the trial, then they will be assigned to either regimen F or regimen G. For regimen F, there is an additional screening process there. And so hopefully the majority of people will be able to be included. So far, we have had 440 people randomized within F or G. What that means is that 440 people started receiving study drug or placebo as part of the placebo-controlled period. And there's a number of people that have already completed the placebo-controlled period for either F or G and are currently in the active treatment extension for either F or G. So they're receiving active drug as part of that long-term extension. So we certainly are making progress, and we hope to close enrollment as soon as possible, but we do still have a few spots available. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, please contact your site or nearby sites to see whether they may have a spot for you. Next slide. And as a companion program to the trial, so separate from the actual trial, we also have expanded access opportunities. And because that topic is sort of growing and the expanded access options are growing exponentially. So I would suggest that we are trying to kind of dedicate specific weeks to specific topics so that we are able to be more focused with the content. And so the second Thursday of every month, we're gonna devote this particular webinar to expanded access. I want to mention for those of you who may be new, we record all webinars, we post slides, recordings on our website. You can find all the links on the slide. And thank you, Catherine, for kindly posting information in the chat right now. So different ways to access the material. You can either join these webinars live or watch the recordings. And we had excellent speakers, including our colleagues from the NIH and colleagues from our institution and other institutions. We also had Gwen Peterson, a patient advocate, participate last week, and we're really excited about providing this content so to answer questions about expanded access. And for the March series, we're going to have Dr. Jinsey Andrews at Columbia, who works closely with Clean Nanomedicine on the NIH-funded EAP for CNIMU8. So if you have questions about that particular program, please don't miss the March meeting. Next slide. There are also other resources for expanded access, so I would recommend these websites. Not only our webinar, but also the NEALS website, lots of great webinars there and information, as well as webinars from other associations. For example, the International Alliance of ALS MND Associations as an excellent webinar series. Next slide. NEALS, the NEALS Consortium, the Northeast ALS Consortium, also hosts a number of webinars. And you can see a few here that we selected from recent webinars or upcoming webinars. And so again, all the webinars can be either watched live or the recordings are available on the website. So, we heard from you that you also would like content about, for example, the FDA-approved medications or nutritional supplements, alternative treatments, etc. So there's a number of resources that continue to be updated so that the information is up to date with new webinars. And so I would recommend going to the NEALS website for that. Next slide. And as always, again, we're here, again, we're trying to have sort of, most of the webinars that we have on Thursdays focused on the platform trial, with the exception of the series, the second week of every month, focusing on EAPs. And then we are also very interested always in getting your input in terms of other topics that may be of interest that are pressing for the community. So I'm very excited to announce that next week we will have our colleague from Mass General, Dr. Mark Garay, who has special expertise in genetics and ALS. And so he'll talk about his research and different programs, different opportunities to be engaged with research for people who carry genetically based ALS. So we heard many questions about that. And so we also want to make sure that we have the right speakers on this program to answer your questions. Actually, I will be traveling next week, so I'm really sorry to miss this webinar, but I'm really excited that Dr. Garay will be here. I heard him speak about genetics and his programs, and it is fantastic. So please don't miss that. And then the following week, we're going to have guest speakers from the University of Chicago, the study team. We used to do this in the past. So we had a number of guest speakers from specific sites. People have asked, there are some sites that are bigger, others that are new or smaller, and we want to highlight the great work that they do and also provide contact information. So, for example, in Chicago, we have a couple of sites. We have Northwestern and we have the University of Chicago. So if you're in the Chicago area, again, consider enrolling at either Northwestern or University of Chicago. Both have spots. So, and the Chicago, your Chicago team will be here in a couple of weeks. And then we will continue with our series. So again, if you have any questions about all of these, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We also have the ALS link. I do want to put in a plug for the ALS link. You can find the QR code on the slide and the link for the website. So you can sign up for this newsletter. It's the newsletter from our clinic, our center. And don't worry, we don't send out too many emails. It's only relevant content, such as registration for these webinars or other webinars that are of high interest for the ALS community. So if you want to have sort of, updates in real time about our research and our programs, please sign up for the email as well. Great. And then if you can take down the slides. And so I see here a couple of questions. So first of all, when do people find out whether they were on active drug or medication? That's a great question that actually pertains to every regimen. And so the participants in regimens A, B, and C have already been told their assignment. So if you participated in A, B, and C, I believe that your site has contacted you. If not, let us know. But we kind of already went through this process to share assignments for people in A, B, and C. We are able to provide treatment assignments for any regimen only when the entire program has been closed. All the databases for both the randomized control period and the open label extension or active treatment extension have been locked. That's sort of a regulatory requirement. So that process has completed for A, B, and C. And we expect that to be completed for D later this year. And then for E also later this year. So we haven't shared assignments for D or E yet because we're working on closing out the databases and completing all analysis for D and E. And so when that happens, then we will be allowed to share information. And so in terms of when the results of the actual regimen E will be available, so that we are working through all these analyses. And so we hope to share all of these with you soon. Again, I don't have a firm timeline because these are complex analyses, and so we just need the statisticians to complete them. So a couple of questions that came up. So there was a question about whether there is any participant stipend for people who participate in the platform trial. So I just want to clarify that. So first of all, people don't have to pay to be in the trial, and we don't pay participants to be in the trial. Actually, providing a sort of financial compensation would be considered a form of coercion. So it's not something that would be allowed. What we can and we do provide is reimbursement for some expenses that might be a barrier for people to participate if we didn't reimburse them. So for example, parking can be very expensive near many academic medical centers, and so that can be reimbursed. And we have a line item for the budget when we do all the contracts with all the sites. And there is a specific amount that's kind of carved out. It actually increased over time. And so that's an amount of money that the sites can pay the participants, again, as a reimbursement for travel expenses or other reasonable expenses. It's a modest amount, and it's only for in-clinic, in-person visits. And again, it's to lower the barriers or defray the costs of actually going to the site and taking time. And there is some small reimbursement for doing a lumbar puncture as well. That's on top of that. And all of this is the same across the sites. All of these is per guidance from the ethics committee. So we follow all of those regulations, including the amount and the modalities. The exact way the participants are given the funds may vary depending on site policies. So for example, some sites have policies and procedures in place to give out checks. Other sites use gift cards. So we don't control that. That's based on the specific site and what their policies are. So there's another question, a follow-up question to what I said earlier. So because I previously shared that because participants in regimens A, B, and C were told if they were on active or placebo. And so the question is, can participants have access to blood work test results? So normally these results, again, they're part of research. They're not included in the clinical chart of participants. So these are not going to be shared, again, in real time or after the fact in terms of safety labs or things like that. Because again, they're considered research, not clinically actionable labs. Now, I will say that during the course of the study, obviously, if there is an abnormality on safety labs, which was specifically the question here, blood work, if there is an abnormality that has a clinical implication. So for example, if somebody developed elevated liver function tests that require some interventions like stopping medications or changing something in terms of medications, then obviously the physician, the investigator who's working with you will be told, and then the physician will tell the participant so that, you know, the appropriate medical care can happen. And also on occasion, at times, if people have a clinical visit on the same day or around the same day as a research visit, if the results are needed for clinical management, we can on occasion, on a case-by-case basis, release them in real time. So for example, if somebody comes in for a research visit and they need to have their liver function tests monitored by the clinic, maybe it's on the same day, there's really no point in doing the labs twice. And so for that reason, for clinical management, that's been allowed again to share. So there's a good question about regimen G. So the question is whether the lumbar puncture is optional or not. and what are the side effects? So yes, great questions. And Katrin, if you don't mind looking up, we have extensive material on lumbar punctures, including brochures, videos, as well as recorded webinars. And all of these can be accessed at any time for additional information. But to start, yes, for regimen G, the lumbar puncture is optional. While it's scheduled for F, it's optional for G. And for G, I will say, while it's optional, it's actually very important. So if people think that they can donate spinal fluid via lumbar puncture for G, we would certainly appreciate it. And the material that's collected is actually used for important research, for important biomarkers. We don't necessarily need it from everyone to have good results, to have meaningful results, and that's why it's optional. But I do want to emphasize that's still very important again. But we understand that for some people it may be hard to participate in the lumbar puncture part of it, so that's why it's optional. The side effects, I will say that if the side effects, we have found that with the specific techniques that we use for the platform trial, specific needles that we use, the side effects are not as pronounced as somebody may have experienced in the past when using larger needles and different types of needles. Common side effects could be headaches, but again, we have reduced that as much as possible with the use of needles, and some bruise, some pain at the site. That's possible. What we've heard is that those are manageable. And certainly, we appreciate everyone going through this, to help advance research. So we do have, again, information about all of these, as well as webinars where actual participants who participated in it shared their experience. So in terms of enrollment, I see here, I think that the comment in the chat is that for someone I think someone is sharing that they contacted a specific site for enrollment in F4G, but it's been delayed, like the enrollment has been delayed because the particular site doesn't have spots. And so can you reach out to the question is, can we reach out to multiple sites to get enrolled quickly? Yes, I will say that, first of all, absolutely, thank you for being willing to participate. I will say if you want to contact Katrin directly and maybe let her know what site is in question, hopefully she can help in the background with two things. Number one, facilitate actual enrollment at the site of your choice, which I assume is probably the easiest for you. And then we can see if there are other sites nearby. So I will say that obviously, enrolling at the site where you receive clinical care or a site near your home is obviously easier logistically. But again, we can try to see if we can help to facilitate the timelines. So a question again about sort of disclosing whether somebody was on active or placebo. And so the question is, why is the disclosure of whether a person was on active or placebo held until after the active treatment extension? So, and to clarify, it's actually after we complete the database process and the analysis for the active treatment extension. So it's after the the project ends. So this is because there is the potential for bias in the study results if people or sites knew if somebody was on active or placebo. So for example, if somebody, if the site staff knows that somebody was on active or placebo, that might influence the way they collect the data. Because let's say that somebody thinks that the drug works. If I know that somebody was on active or placebo, maybe I'll give them better scores when they are in active treatment extension. That's a potential bias, unconscious bias. Nobody's trying to do that intentionally. I just want to be clear, it's just unconscious. And so to protect from the potential hypothetical bias, we cannot release it until later. And the same goes for the actual database lock and analysis. So after participants have participated, or, have been physically in the study, there is a whole process that goes on in the background where the study staff, the data managers, and the statisticians actually look at each single data point and verify that, making sure that that's correct, that's exactly as it was collected, etc. So, so for this reason, again, we cannot bias anyone, not even the data managers or the statisticians. And so that's why the disclosure for everyone, really, not just for the participant, but also for us, for the study staff, has to be delayed until then. So, and there's a question about, blood work. So somebody before asked if, if blood work can be shared. Well, and the question is, if everyone is blinded during the trial, which is the case, how will clinicians know if a patient has abnormal blood work? Well, there are some sort of routine or classic blood tests that we run, for example, liver function tests. And there are some specific cutoffs. So whether somebody was on active or placebo, it doesn't matter. We just know that, for example, certain levels of liver function tests are normal or not. Now, obviously, because we're blinded, we don't know if that was due to the drug or maybe it was going to happen anyway. So that's, that's a different aspect of it. So it's hard, we just collect the data and again, we compare to normal values. There's a question about any updates on regimen F. So again, so far so good in terms of, regimens F and G are being done and conducted and enrolling well, although again, we do have some spots available. We don't have any results yet. And sort of following the principles I was explaining earlier, we don't do any analysis until the end, right? So everything has to be blinded and kind of, really rigorously kind of obtained and treated the same way without knowing if somebody was on active or placebo until the very end, because otherwise knowledge of whether somebody was on active or placebo could bias unconsciously, the results and the interpretation. So we won't know the results until the trial is over, which is why we can't wait to enroll people. So I think I took all the questions that we had tonight. And so if you have any questions about genetics ALS, I would suggest that, again, you join next week where we're going to have an expert talking about all of this. And it's not really about the platform trial, but because we received so many questions about genetics, and I know this is at the forefront right now, very exciting area of research. That's why we're having our colleague come. And Catherine, I'll leave you maybe the last word. If you have anything you want to share about how we can help people get enrolled, that would be great before we end.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I work, through the Healey Center at Mass General in Boston, but I work closely with all of our different sites. So definitely, regardless of where in the US you are, I promise not to call you at 8 a.m. Eastern time if you live in California. But other than that, I'm happy to connect if anybody has interest in getting into the trial or has questions about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And well, I won't be here next week, but I'm glad that Catherine and Dr. Garay and Jesse will be here. And so I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.